You're listening to the Black Eagles podcast with Sinan and Kan Bayazit.
Ahmet Dursun Sergen aldı. Sergen Bülent yan yana. Sergen Bülent. Sergen. Yanında Tümer var. Tümer'e doğru at. Tümer gitti. Tümer topu aldı. Sergen aldı. Gol! Gol! Gol! Sergen attı. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi.
İbrahim'in pası. Roma. Şimdi Ahmet. İkinci gole gidiyor Beşiktaş. Ahmet.
Welcome back, everybody. Episode 104 of Beşiktaş International's The Black Eagles podcast. I am your host, Sinan Schwarting, live from New York City, as always. And today is an interesting one, an interesting episode, an interesting day in human history and all of that. I'm alone, which is quite rare. For our regular listeners, you'll know that this is not common. But then, of course, given where we are in humanity at the moment, perhaps it's understandable and even fitting in a way. Maybe an intimate episode between me and you listeners. Yeah, of course, there's Beşiktaş stuff to talk about, as always, big and small, as well as, some global stuff. Obviously, probably just to get the, whatever it is, elephant in the room out of the way. Obviously, we're in the midst of a major global pandemic. The coronavirus is sweeping across the world. Almost 240,000 people infected with it just getting underway, obviously in a number of major countries around the world, very populated ones, including the one I'm in currently. Almost 10,000 people have died already, and it's of course a somber period in human history. And I extend my condolences to anyone who may have lost anyone to this, who has been inconvenienced by it, who's maybe been hospitalized or even just, had the version that didn't require that, but apparently is still, pretty, not so fun, I guess we could say. Yeah, it's a crazy time to be alive, for sure. Condolences to everyone who's lost their work, perhaps, through this. I know entire industries around the planet, locally, globally, are just shutting down. Something like 10% of this country's workforce just got unemployed in the last few days. Stunning turn of events, obviously. And it's hard to talk about football in that context, obviously, too. I think that's so weird to be talking to myself at this time, and to you guys sort of in this weird way. But it's weird. I volunteered to do this podcast to help Khan out. It was never something I'd sort of sought out to do with my life, be a podcaster. I just happened to know how to do some of the back end stuff and had an intense interest in Beşiktaş. And so to have kind of taken the reins of the whole thing and to be here, to be podcasting at all, maybe doesn't come naturally to me. And to be doing it at this point in history with this kind of heaviness, this weight on us all, obviously, with the fear of this thing, perhaps, or the way our lives have been flipped upside down. I know I'm at home taking care of my child, sort of taking care of the educational aspects of her life. Our schools have been shut down, obviously in New York. is a sort of epicenter right now as far as the outbreak here in the United States. I think here in the States we've had almost 13,000 cases, not quite 200 deaths, but it's really just getting underway. And as an epicenter, I happen to live on the east side of Manhattan in the sort of hospital district. A number of the public hospitals are not far from my house. So normally I have sirens in the background you'll often hear during previous episodes, and I do my best to sort of mute them out. Now I'm recording super late because in a dark twist, the ambulances were obviously, you could pretty much hear them all day, which signaled, it's odd for anyone who fears what's coming, I guess. Being in the center of it right now, I can say that you don't feel it. I don't personally know anyone who has the COVID-19. Of course, a number of people I know and even myself and family members have been sick in the previous few months. With kids, you get sick all the time, all sorts of viruses, so one never quite knows what they're sick with. But there was some bad stuff going around this season, obviously with the flu. But even more recently, a number of us at my daughter's school had a kind of virus-like thing. Again, nobody died that I know of. But yeah, it's weird because suddenly, the cases are blowing up and people are going to hospitals and dying. And that's, happening next door. But at the same time, you don't feel it. 200 deaths sounds like a lot, in a couple days. And it's obviously going to be ballooning and getting much more dire from here on out. But, the main feature of life is just passing time away indoors. Most people stay indoors and work from home now, minus a few essential jobs, which are like grocers and delivery people. Restaurants are closed except for delivery and pickup. Obviously, people walking their dogs. So it's eerily quiet in the streets of New York throughout the day, honestly. Although during the daytime, obviously, people go for walks and whatnot. But so, that's the sort of climate I'm in here. And so this is, a long preamble to episode 104, and a kind of reminder, a bookmark, I guess, for where we are in history, but also an excuse. I should apologize. Obviously, we've been gone since March 2nd. So we missed a couple matches here. As you all can imagine, I think Khan and I have been taking on teaching duties now for a little while. And Evran Akman, who was in school, his school was canceled, and so he's gone back to his home. He doesn't even have his headset with him because he thought he was going home for a short time for spring break, and it's ended up being the end of his semester. On a personal note with Evran, I had hooked him up with an opportunity to try out for a local team in an up-and-coming league here in the States, and a team that had just gotten kind of accredited to be a professional team, and that was canceled because of all their practices this season, everything, along with all professional sports here. So poor Evran had a huge opportunity in life kind of put on hold, but everyone cross your fingers. Hopefully that will manifest itself somewhere down the line. But yeah, so that's obviously a major theme of this episode. And I suppose I'll start out at the end of our story with Beşiktaş. And that's to say that as of earlier today, or I guess I should say yesterday, because it's now like 1 a.m. here, almost 2. Yesterday, it was announced by the TFF that the Super League has been suspended and potentially canceled, I'd imagine. We shall see. obviously there will be more details to come, and everyone's sort of waiting to see what's going to happen. I know in Turkey the virus was not tested, much like here in the States. I don't know if it's poor governance or just the sheer kind of unprecedented nature of the event that's occurring. But people weren't tested, and so it's spread quite a bit under our radars collectively. And so I think in Turkey it's just starting to, the numbers are rising and people are being contracted communally, meaning not from people who weren't even traveling. So it's spreading locally there now. So obviously prayers to them over there. I hope everyone's doing okay. And like I said, stay indoors if you can in these times. Protect our elders who are obviously more at risk than us, if you can. Try to make the best of these occasions. Get to spend some time with your family. Pick up some hobbies. Whoever you're locked up with anyway, if it's family or roommates or whatever it may be. It's an opportunity to, pick up an instrument. Maybe you've played an instrument as a kid. But yeah, there's not going to be any football. That's not happening. So the season's been canceled. And as such, there are two matches to be covered here. There's the home match against Ankaragücü, and then there was an away match at the Türk Telekom Arena against Galatasaray. And so because we're basically out of content now for an indeterminate amount of time, we have made the executive decision to sort of slow down our analysis. We've divided up these two games into 2 episodes. Today I'll just be covering the Ankaragücü match, which is already, from March 6th. So it's a little dated, I'm not gonna lie. But sorry for all the coronavirus talk, obviously. It's not particularly pleasant conversations, but I guess if there's a bright side to all of this, it's that, like I said, we're going to spend time with people we love. We're keeping people safe. We're banding together as a community to help each other. Obviously stay in touch with us here at the podcast. We're here to entertain any questions or conversations you want had. If you want to feature on an episode, we're open for anything. We want to be a source of aid to our community. I know that I didn't really want to do this episode or any of these episodes for a little while, obviously without much football on my mind. But in a way, I felt like for all of you guys out there, and we have almost, 150, 200 regular listeners now. Who knows? Maybe you guys want something to listen to, I thought. So, and maybe you want to remember times when we did have some football to talk about and analyze. So, spreading this out into 2 different episodes to talk about each match individually, I thought could be beneficial for everyone. And if you're not in the mood for football, by all means, I get it. And if our numbers are low, I don't hold it against anyone. But so, without further ado, let's talk about Beşiktaş versus Ankaragücü, and shout outs to Emre Hastur, who was, of course, at Vodafone Park, collecting sounds from the stadium during the match. Thank you, Emre. And you'll hear more of these sounds throughout, as usual. So, let's talk Beşiktaş. We're going to have to go back in time a little ways to March 6th. March 6th is now 14 days ago which is exactly 2 weeks. Cuckoo clock here to remind us. And at this point in time in the Super League, Beşiktaş was in a kind of troubling 7th place in the standings. Ankaragücü was on the up and up, supposedly. I had called out the fact that they were actually kind of dipping in form a bit coming into our match, but Kaan was firmly of the belief that they were going to be tough competition. And sure enough, it was an interesting match. Well, I wouldn't know. I don't know if I'd say it was actually tough competition in the end. I think I was right to say that we needed those 3 points and should have gotten them. And without being a spoiler here, I'll just get into the match. So, going into this match, with all of that said, all of that on the line, the lineup that Sergen Yalçın would put out for this home match would be Loris Karius in the goal, Domagoj Vida and Victor Ruiz in the middle of our defense, Caner Erkin on the left side, and Jermaine Lens as a right back. So I think he was taking more of an attacking approach against what you'd think would be a weaker Ankaragücü side relative to Beşiktaş, that is. El Nendi and Atiba would start in the core of our midfield with Tyler Boyd and Nkudu on the wings, with Boateng replacing Ljajic and in the attacking midfielder role, and Burak Yilmaz up front. Yeah, and that's, not many surprises except perhaps to see Jermaine Lens there. But I think perhaps that would even be welcome for many, just to see the incentive there, the intent from Sergen Yalçın to go on the attack. And it would bear fruit. Let's just dive right into this match. So this match got off to a start that I think most of us Beşiktaş fans will not have been used to, by which I mean things got going early and not in a negative way. In the 4th minute of time, Atiba Hutchinson got some contact from Fatih. There's some debate as to the extent to which it was really a foul. I'm not going to speculate too much about the penalty call itself. I felt okay about it at the time, as I recall. But sure enough, 4 minutes into the match, and Atiba Hutchinson has earned Beşiktaş a trip to the penalty spot. And Burak Yilmaz would put it away. Putting it to his left, the keeper went to his left, the opposite way. And so it was a clean penalty, clean finish. And Beşiktaş has the lead. Of course, 6 minutes in at this point. You'd think that this would give Ankaragücü some momentum and would steal them and put sort of Beşiktaş on the defensive slightly, maybe a little comfortable. But that's not how it would bear out. Beşiktaş would go straight on the attack, and a big credit to Tyler Boyd, whose resurgence was noted yet again in this match. Very early on, he found, on a really neat sort of back heel touch, found Burak Yilmaz, who sort of rocketed it past a little high, too much power on it. Then shortly after, it would be Jermaine Lens, who would sort of muscle the ball to Burak Yilmaz, who would, again, have a nice opportunity. He would rocket it wide, this time with his left foot at least, so you can understand it was his off foot. So Burak Yilmaz would have a few opportunities as such to really push Beşiktaş ahead early, beyond just the first goal. He would botch them. Boateng muffed a header on a nice little chip in from Tyler Boyd. So yeah, Tyler Boyd was very active, very helpful, very useful, but it just wasn't quite amounting to anything for Beşiktaş in the attack, nonetheless. But yeah, not too much further into the match, Dever Orgil, the Jamaican, would get himself a yellow card for a sloppy tackle. And then additionally in the 37th minute, Lukasic would also get himself a yellow card. So Ankaragücü was not only down a goal on the defensive much of the half, kind of, you can't even say bending and not breaking because they broke as far as the penalty. But, Beşiktaş wasn't really putting it together. Nonetheless, again, Sedat would get himself, Acay would get himself a yellow card also. So there was a third player in the books. Ankaragücü was not looking in particularly good shape going into the second half, rather. Jermaine Lens also earned himself a yellow card. I don't remember the foul, honestly. We're talking 2 weeks, so whatever. But yeah, halftime, Beşiktaş has the 1-0 lead. Things are looking pretty good, honestly. In retrospect, actually, I think that cross that I attributed to Tyler Boyd, that Boateng muffed with his head, may have come from Jermaine Lens. But yeah, just generally, things looked great in the first half for Beşiktaş, especially in attack. And starting off the second half, they still looked pretty good, which you'd think would be a good sign. Nkudu would get kind of hot right out of the gates in the second half and sort of set things up. But again, still couldn't quite get things done on the finishing end. Nkudu earned a few corners. Boateng and Boyd, I think, challenged the keeper at one point. Burak Yilmaz kind of missed a couple chances from Nkudu, as I recall. But all in all, the more dangerous action in the second half would probably be coming from... you'd really have to give some credit to Ankaragücü and perhaps to Kahn's prediction that they'd be a threat, because they did turn up the volume a bit in their attack. Orgil would actually score a goal, although it would be called offside in the 60th minute. I think it was Orgil offside, but it may have actually been Kitsiu who made the first contact. It's a bit of a scrum. Karius actually made a pretty decent save initially, but then spilled the ball. Orgil put it away, but anyway, it was deemed offside, so no harm, no foul. Luckily, I think Karius made a pretty decent save on a cracker of a shot, although the angle was tight. Still, whatever. Karius had looked all right until he spilled that, and that was a scary moment, because then we still have just a goal lead, and not exactly the type of stuff that instills a whole lot of confidence, obviously. But still, Beşiktaş, by and large, was holding much of the ball, looked likely to at least pressure for another goal, if not get one. But still, on the defensive, Victor Ruiz got himself a yellow. El Neni got a yellow. Diaby would come into the match in the 66th minute after the goal that was called offsides. I think Sergen Yalçın hoped we'd take more initiative, because at that point we were looking shaky. Diaby would play on the wing, and it would move Boyd into the middle, where he succeeded previously with the squad a bit. I won't really go too much into Ankaragücü's subs, but I will say that Adem Ljajic came into the match in the 78th minute for Nkudu, I think again sending Boyd out to the wing so that Ljajic could play in the number 10 role. Fatih would get himself a yellow card in the 82nd minute. Michalak would get himself a yellow card in the 83rd minute. Lukasic, who'd already gotten himself a yellow card, would come out of the match for Scarione. Doruk, if you're listening, didn't make a contribution in the end, but the man who would make a contribution in the 88th minute would be Adem Ljajic. And it would be a beautiful effort, to be quite honest, where he got the ball, I don't know, 3 yards, maybe that's a little generous, maybe 1 or 2 yards outside of the penalty box. But he sent in a laser of a shot across the goal and into the top right corner of the net. Stunner. And of course, he would stick his fingers in his ears and sort of make shushing, or no, like sort of talking, like the crowd's sort of chattering noises with his hands, whatever it was. He was obviously not pleased with Beşiktaş fans. And I know that sort of stirred up a lot of feelings on either side, attacking Adem Ljajic or defending him. I'm not going to get into it. I feel like we are in dark times as it is, and I don't want to rehash silly disputes. At the end of the day, what's important is that Adem Ljajic scored a hell of a goal in the 88th minute, giving Beşiktaş a 2-0 lead, and it would end up being pretty important. We'll talk about why in a moment. Umut Nayir would come into the match for Burak Yilmaz in the 90th minute, and you'd think that was probably to waste a bit of time. Obviously, Burak Yilmaz being older and injury prone, also, why not? Attila Turan would come out of the match for İlhan Parlak, and that would also be consequential because just 3 minutes later, in the 3rd minute of extra time, and there would only be 4, a penalty was called on Domagoj Vida. There was a high kick just on the edge of the box. Didn't look much like a penalty, but it was a dangerous play for sure. And it probably was in the box upon review. Maybe not. Again, we have bigger fish to fry in the world now than to rehash things that didn't matter too much. Because in the end, yes, the penalty was called. İlhan Parlak would put it away pretty neatly in the bottom right corner. But it wouldn't matter because just 1 minute later, the whistle would be blown for the end of full-time. Beşiktaş winning the match 2-1. I won't go too much into the standings and end of it because, of course, since then we've also played Galatasaray, and so where we are in the standings is further from where we were then, and so kind of recalling it is not so important. We'll talk about the standings after our analysis of the Galatasaray match, which would come in the concurrent week. But let's stick to the topic at hand. Ankaragücü stats. Statistically, interesting match. Again, having scored in the 4th minute, you'd think that our sort of very possession-heavy brand of football would be altered, that we might have less of the ball. But you'd be mistaken to think that. As a matter of fact, possession went 66% in favor of Beşiktaş, 34% to Ankaragücü. Fairly standard, to be honest, for Beşiktaş, although, again, you would think that might not be the case. This would call for something less standard. But that's a credit to our style and the fact that perhaps it's really sunk in. I guess another conversation is if you could say the same about Beşiktaş in the Galatasaray match, but obviously that would be a very different side they were going up against and would require a very different outlook. But yeah, 12 shots on target apiece. Both sides had 12 shots on target. Ankaragücü had 5. Sorry, both sides had 12 shots. Ankaragücü had 5 on target. Beşiktaş, only 2 shots on target and 2 goals scored. So you'd say ruthlessly efficient, although 2 shots on target versus 12 in total would obviously say something very much the opposite. Especially Burak Yilmaz was quite profligate, not putting away a number of chances and sort of racking up the shots off target in the first half, as well as a number of others, though he wasn't alone in that regard. And he did score a goal for Beşiktaş, even though it was a penalty. So you can't complain too much. But yeah, back to stats. 83% passing accuracy by Beşiktaş on 528 completed passes. Ankaragücü, on the other hand, had only 270 passes completed at an accuracy rate of 67%. Ankaragücü committed 17 fouls, trying to slow down Beşiktaş's play, trying to break up the fluidity of their attack, which was very present. Barring maybe 20 minutes in the second half where things got a little out of control. But somehow Beşiktaş also committed 14 fouls. And I don't see the utilitarian need for that, given the dominance Beşiktaş had on the ball, etc., etc., etc. But perhaps I don't really recall the referee's performance here, but that definitely calls something into question. 5 yellow cards awarded to Ankaragücü and 3 to Beşiktaş. So, I mean, it could have just been a really dirty match. Certainly, I do recall some dirty fouls on the part of Ankaragücü, and perhaps Beşiktaş responded, but whatever. That's what it was. 8 cards handed out in the match. 4 offsides apiece, which good news for Beşiktaş. I think when we have offsides, it suggests intent going forward, and that was there in spades, obviously. The fact that Ankaragücü also had 4 offsides and 5 corner kicks to Beşiktaş's 1 suggests that despite not having the ball much, they still managed to, to put a bit of scare in us, to have some of the ball in our end of the pitch, and they did. I think you can say that they were pretty effective on the counter. They were generally a resilient unit. They fought pretty well. To be fair, Beşiktaş probably could have had 4 goals in the first half alone, if not for some inefficiency up there. But that's just what it is. That's where we are. We've had a rotating unit for much of the season. Lots of guys out for injuries. Guys who came in late as far as transfers, card suspensions. Not to mention guys who basically were part of the major rotation and then just got dropped because of financial constraints and all of that. So, with all of the upheaval, you expect a bit of inconsistency, I guess. But yeah, still, you obviously want to see more efficiency up there. My man of the match probably would be Tyler Boyd, who was a spark plug, especially early in the match, which was where we needed it. And, to be up a goal early, although obviously that was Atiba who earned the penalty, but, just to have that, attack, that impetus early in the match was great to see. Beşiktaş has had a tendency of falling behind unexpectedly on the counter, and that being the kind of thing that wakes them up. Obviously, that's not a very sustainable approach to playing football. So, yeah, to see Beşiktaş take the lead and the initiative early was fun, exciting, rewarding. But yeah, that would be that, I guess. I don't think we have a whole lot more to say. I don't want to pick a low light for the match. Obviously, Karius's spill was not so good, but the fact that it was called offside and didn't hurt us helps. And he did make some saves, so I guess there's no point to pick on him. No point in picking on him. It was a very important 3 points, honestly, going into the subsequent match against Galatasaray, the big derby. It was great, and building on the victory against Alanyaspor, kind of fully overcoming the lull, perhaps. Obviously, the loss to Başakşehir here was a blow. And then, the draw to Trabzon, less of a negative, I think. It was a great performance by the team. It was a draw against a team that was in good form and playing good football. And we really, I thought, in a lot of ways, dominated the match in spurts. So to follow up that sort of lull with 2 good performances and 2 wins against Alanya on the road, and then following that up with Ankaragücü at home was certainly a positive. We wanted to feel like we were building towards that, kind of building that momentum going into the big derby against Galatasaray. And of course, I don't want to say any more about that. We probably all know how that ended up, but I still want to, for the sake of not knocking down the fourth wall or whatever it is, we'll leave that for the next episode. But 3 points against Ankaragücü. Man, what a time it was to be alive back then when the Super League was still in action. But that's it. That's all we have to say about Ankaragücü. We'll be back soon in the next week or so with analysis of the Galatasaray match. We'll relive the derby. Again, shouts to Emre Hasturk for the stadium sounds. Those are always a pleasant, ambiance, I think, for the episode. Make us all feel like we're more there than we are, probably. Once again, anyone negatively impacted by COVID-19 financially through their work, by having to work from home, having to take care of their kids who aren't in schools, anyone who's sick or whose family is sick. Gosh, I hate to imagine, but we have some listeners who are older, so please be safe. To everyone, if you can, hashtag stay home, although we are less likely to really feel the negative aspects of this thing, it is happening. It's a terrible virus that people are getting. And, even if that's not the case, we're carriers. I think it's being found out that we transmit this thing easily and oftentimes don't show symptoms. And so, for the sake of your loved ones and the elders, your kin, stay home if you can. Follow the instructions of your local governments, whatever it may be. Stay safe, everyone. If you're in the medical industry, if you're a medical worker, you are a hero in this time, in this day and age, and you are much appreciated. We love you here at the Black Eagles podcast. And you know what? This is a time, where the tables are turned, and I think people like grocers, people who work in grocery stores, people who stock shelves, people who deliver food, truck drivers who are bringing food from the farms into our cities, people who work in restaurants, people who deliver our food, people who don't get a lot of shine, right? People who are often underappreciated. Their value to us in our society is being made very obvious. And so to all of you, thank you. All heroes don't wear capes. Some of you ride bikes and deliver food, or whatever, medicine. Obviously most of all, though, to doctors and nurses, all the work you're going to be doing in the coming days and weeks is so appreciated. And if you're listening, we appreciate you most of all. And we give you all a massive shout out. Stay safe, everyone. Obviously, another aspect of all of this as Beşiktaş fans is that we need to step up, be good role models, consider the elderly. They're obviously very scared right now. They don't know what they're supposed to do. They should be staying indoors probably. If they need food, knock on their doors, ask if they can give you, tell them you'd be happy to pick up their groceries for them, maybe, if you can. Obviously, we all need to come together as a community and help each other out. And, anything you can do like that to help old folks, probably have to get their own medicine in person. I don't think a random stranger can just get medicine for someone, but help them in any way you can. And stay in touch with people you love. If you can't do so in person, obviously, Skype. This is the age of technology, and luckily we have it. So stay in touch with loved ones. Don't get lonely and depressed. And yeah, we'll be here for you guys. We'll be here with more and more content to get through these coming days, maybe months, hanging out at home together. And of course, follow us on Twitter at Beşiktaş_INT. Follow the mothership for all Beşiktaş related news, though I don't know how much there will be in the coming days and weeks. At the very least, we can see if the season is officially canceled, or if they're going to do a playoff to determine the champion this season, if there will be one, or if they'll just leave it blank and throw an asterisk on the year. Stay tuned, obviously. We'll be back for the upcoming episode to talk about Galatasaray and obviously any more updates vis-a-vis the TFF. Follow us, meanwhile, too, at Eagles_podcast. Follow myself at Sir_Rights_a-lot. Follow Khan, the man, at Razarian, RAZZERIAN. Follow everyone at fan of BJK. And just, man, stay strong, everyone. Stay home. And, reinvestigate old hobbies. And of course, I would be remiss to mention Go Beşiktaş! Stay safe. We want you guys to be healthy, and we will do our best to produce content to give you something to do at home so you don't have to get bored and put yourselves in danger or anyone else. Stay strong. Beşiktaş community.
Beşiktaş International hopes you enjoyed this program.